We'll wait for a few more people to join, and then I just kind of wanted to share this fun thing. This DnD Encounter tracker. It's a template in our template gallery that I use. I don't know if other people use it, hopefully eventually. It's very nerdy, but very helpful. Yeah. Well, I guess I'll just talk about it because it's not important to today's lesson. So basically, it's a way to track, if you're the dungeon master, combat that's coming up, and then your players, a turn order, and then it automatically rolls up stuff like how many experience points they're getting and other things that are helpful when you're managing encounters. But what I really wanted to show was this dice roller. It's a custom widget, and you can throw dice. It looks very cool. And I think what I wanted to reveal is I didn't have to write any code for this, because custom widgets can do really powerful things when you can write code, or when you would like to, but also you can use it to embed an iframe in Grist. So I just found somebody who had made this and offered it free online. So I just Googled, and then I found this. This is the URL that was in the iframe embed code. So I just stripped that out. And what I mean by that is, so for example, if you're on Google Maps, and so here I have the Met in New York. If you click on share, there's embed a map. So this is a iframe code. You can take just the middle part of this. It's pretty long. I hope I don't end up copying all of it, but let's see, to here. So let's say I come back here and I add a widget, a custom widget. I'm going to add it to page, and then I can add that in the URL with no access. Nope, I copied the whole thing. It's because Google tries to be helpful by making it easy to copy the whole thing with one click. So I'll just get rid of all the code around it. And then if I click enter, the map's embedded. So this is, super helpful. You can zoom around, you can move around just like a Google map. So if you don't need to write code to actually access your data, you just want something like this, it's super helpful. Yeah. And also, if you want to manage DnD encounters, this template's super helpful. The one I use personally is even more beefed up now, because that's the good thing about Grist documents. It just grows over time. I'm like, oh, I want to track this as well and track this other thing. It's pretty cool. Okay, should we wait a little bit longer, Dimitri? What do you think? Or should we start?
I think we can start.
Okay. So today what I wanted to talk about, it's the two types of Grist formulas. And for some of you, this might be the first time you're hearing about it. Some of you might already know that there's two types of formulas. There's the regular formulas that behave the way you would expect in a spreadsheet. And then there's trigger formulas that only trigger when certain conditions are met, such as when a new record is created or when specific fields in a record are updated. And the interesting thing about this, it's a regular formula, it's always calculating a value based on other data in the spreadsheet, where a trigger formula, it's only triggering on a certain condition, and it's storing that value as data. So if you go into the cell editor, you can play with that data without editing the underlying formula. So why is this useful? It's useful for maybe creating a timestamp when you want to know when a record was created or when it was updated, or maybe by who, or data cleaning. You can paste data into a cell and then have a trigger formula that strips maybe empty spaces, or maybe you're bringing data from a CRM that has the full name and you want, in this column, strip just the first name, in this column, strip just the last name, so you can separate those as two different fields. Trigger formulas help you do that more easily. So let's work on a template where we can add trigger formulas and some formulas. After we add trigger formulas, I'm going to go into some of my favorite formulas that I use all the time that'll be super helpful and expand what Grist can do. So before I explain this dashboard, let's explain what we're doing here. So this is a company. It's a made-up company. They're tailors. They do luxury menswear. And this is a dashboard where they're looking at candidates applying for certain positions. This dashboard is built on 3 tables. A table of roles. These are the positions they're hiring for. And then a table of candidates tied to a role. So this is a reference column tying each one of these candidates to the role that they applied for. And then there's a table of interactions that's tying each one of these interactions. So if somebody scanned an application or did a first or second round interview, talked to a reference, that's tied to a particular candidate. So then these three tables and these links, these relational links, help us create this dashboard where I can click between the different roles, see the related candidates, see their information come up. I can add a resume right here. I can add a challenge and then see the related interactions. So I can scroll down and see what's happened so far. So far, everything here, no code. It's just using reference columns, linking widgets, different data types like tables or cards, and there's no formulas yet. But we want to make this dashboard even better. So we're going to start adding some formulas. So let's start with this interactions card. So I'm going to use the shortcut Control + sign to add a new row. So when I add a new interaction here, because this is already linked to Greta, that automatically fills in. I need to come in now and add the date, my own name, because I'm the one who did this, what stage, the stage of the application, like is it a second round interview, a reference, some notes, next steps, rating this interaction. There's a lot to fill in here. We can automate some of this. So for example, we could have the date auto-populate with a trigger formula. So let's just go in here in this data column. So here we have column behavior where we can make a regular formula column or we can stay as a data column. We're going to set a trigger formula. So let's make it today. We want to know the date when a new record is created. So you'll notice nothing happened because this isn't a new record, right? That's the key thing about trigger formulas. So let's delete this and do it again, right? Now we have the trigger formula set up. Add it, and there's today's date. And as I said when I was trying to explain the difference, this is storing that value. It's not a regular formula where when you click into the editor, you edit the formula. Here you can click into the editor and you can select a different date if that's the correct thing to do. Maybe you want to go in there and change it. And you can see that when I apply that formula, normally it would have applied the formula to all of the other fields in the other records. It didn't change any of the other fields. So it's just creating that date, it's running that today formula when I apply, create a new record, because that's when I'm applying the trigger. Trigger formulas also have access to two variables that regular formulas do not. One of them, it's user information. You can embed user objects. So that's how we can automatically add who did what, or like who modified a record or who added a new record. Or you could add their email. So here in lead, let's also set a trigger formula. And here I'm going to say user dot and then the object. So you can see that there's multiple objects. It can have it be the email or the name. Let's go with name. Again, nothing happened because it's a trigger formula. We need a new row. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to keep deleting this one because it's going to look bad later. So now I add a new one. You can see there's my name. And again, I can change this if I wanted to. So here, we're improving the dashboard by having some data automatically fill in, saving some steps. But now let's talk about data cleaning. So sometimes if you've ever looked at resumes, you've probably noticed that sometimes people have their names in all caps, or if they're like really cool, all lowercase. And you might be copying and pasting it into this template. And maybe you're a meticulous data entry person and you want it always in title case and you're going through and you're like editing it. You could just have Grist do that for you. So let's go ahead and set a trigger formula here that's going to add that title case. So let's say we were doing this with a regular formula. The process would be create another column and write a formula referencing the text in the original column to apply a change. With a trigger formula, you can reference the value in the cell without creating that circular reference. So for example, let's use proper, which is a Grist function, which is like a spreadsheet function, and we're just going to type value. And again, this is only available to trigger formulas. It's not available to regular formulas. And let's say we're only going to apply it when the name field is updated. So let's say I'm copying and pasting a name that's all caps. It changed it to title case. So that, again, makes things a little bit quicker, saves some steps. And there could be times where it's even more important than this, like separating first name from last name or cleaning up spaces. Okay, so that's trigger formulas. Dimitri, should I stop for a question before I jump to formulas? If anyone has a question about this.
Yeah, let's give a minute for questions if anybody has any.
Yeah.
I don't see any questions in the chat. If you have questions while Anais is talking, feel free to put them in the chat and we might find breaks to ask them during the presentation, or else we'll get to the questions afterwards.
Okay. So that's trigger formulas, and that's a sense of what they can do. Now we're going to talk about regular formulas because I want to share two that I use a lot. So maybe it'll be very helpful to you as well. We could work with formulas in card views, but I want to work in table view of this data. So remember this candidate's data, it's this card data just expressed in a different way. You can create different views of the same data. I want to work here so I can expose different things and really show you what's happening. So sometimes you want to take pieces of data and format it in a different way to make it easier to copy and paste somewhere else, or to do searches. If you're the spreadsheet user, you might use like concatenate to do this. You could do that as well in Grist. That function is supported. I really like this format. So I'm going to format, oh, I still have Kendall Jenner all caps. I'm going to format the name and the email so that I can copy and paste it into a email composer like Gmail and include the name. So I want the name between quotes and the email between arrows. So actually, instead of watching me slowly write this, let me just copy and paste and then explain what the formula is. So how does this work? So I'm going to set a formula. You can see that when a column is empty, you can set a formula, a trigger formula, or just a data column. So let's set a formula. I'm going to copy and paste it. So what we're seeing here is between these single quotes, I have squiggly brackets between the quotes that I want in the formatting, and another set of curly brackets between those arrows, dot format, and then I have these fields. So remember in Grist, these fields are referring to, so here we have name with the $sign, that's the Python name that you use in formulas. So this is filling in each one of these fields into those curly brackets respectively. So name goes in the first one, email goes in the second one. And if I click enter, you can see that this is formatted in a way that I can take it and put it somewhere else. So I use that formula all the time, sometimes to combine first name and last name into a full name in a CRM so I can search on that full name, or pieces of like URLs sometimes, like if you have like a Amazon product code and you know the store, you just want to like change out the Amazon code or something. You could do something like this and that hyperlink would work. Okay, so let's go back to the dashboard and remember that each one of these interactions has a rating. Not this one that I made up. Let's get rid of this one that I made up, but here's like, here's a 5, a 4, another 5. It's on a scale of 1 to 5. And it would be very useful to roll up that rating into an average at the candidate level. So let's refresh ourselves on the structure here. Candidates has no reference, or has a reference to the role, but no reference to the interactions. But interaction has a reference to candidate. If you're familiar with a reference lookup, so let me recap what a reference lookup is. So a reference lookup is when you say, okay, there's a reference column here pointing to a candidate, and I want to look up additional information. I have the name here. Can I also pull the email in? And the way that that works is you would write in the name of the reference column. You can see Grist is starting to autofill that in. And then it'll tell you, okay, which field from the referenced table do you want? What do you want to pull in? I say, okay, I want to pull in the email. And then it'll come in and pull in that email. This change was me. I want to show you what that does. So basically, this is a normal formula. It's always being calculated. So if I come back here where it's pulling this email information and I do Greta@Gmail, it changed it over here as well. Okay, so that's a reference lookup. The referencing table, really simple. This is how you drill down to find additional fields. But what if I want to do it in reverse? What if I want to know all of the interactions that are pointing to a particular candidate? And the reason I want to do that is because I want to know what is the rating in each one of those interactions so that I can take the average. This is one of my favorite things to explain, because if you really understand this, then you really open up a lot of possibilities in Grist, and you're on your way to becoming a Grist super user. So to understand that, you need to understand what a reference column is. So this reference column, even though I'm seeing a name, the value in this cell is not a name. It's actually an entire string. It's an entire record. This is pointing to all of Greta's record in the candidates table, right? So in the candidates table, it's showing me everything. And then I'm just, to make it easier on my eyes, so I know what I'm looking at, choosing to display something. I can also do it by email or something else. And one of the things you'll notice here is row ID. So what is a row ID? The row ID is the ID that Grist assigns to each record. So if I change it to row ID, you can see it's just saying in candidates. So Greta, which is the first four, she's number 1 in candidates. So let's go over here and I'll show you what I mean by that. I can expose the ID here. You can always expose a row's ID by writing $ID. So you see Greta's number 1, Tacky is number 2. So when you come back here, these are the 2 interactions tied to Tacky, because he's number 2 in candidates. So you can see it has nothing to do with this order here. It's the actual ID of the record. So why am I explaining this? It's because what we want to do in this table is we want to say, give me all the interactions where this ID matches this row's ID. Give me a list of all of those interactions. Okay, let's do that. So we're going to do the average rating. We're building to the average rating. We're going step by step. And it's a little tricky to wrap your head around, but like I said, it opens everything up. So we're going to do a lookup. So the way a lookup works is first you write the name of the table that you want to look up. In this case, it's interactions. Dot lookup. You have a choice, lookup 1 if there's just one value that you want, or lookup records when there's multiple. And in this case, we want lookup records. I clicked on the support instead of going down, but lookup, which is good to know. You can do that when you want to find a function in our support. So if you do lookup records, you're finding multiple interactions that could be tied to this row. So again, like we said, now you're going to write the column in that other table in interaction. So it's called candidate. We know that the actual value in that reference column is this ID. So we want it to equal the ID of this row. So in this equal sign on the left is the column in the table that you're looking up. And then after the equal sign, it's the field in this table. So we're looking at the ID for this row. So if I do that, you can see that I'm getting a list of interactions. So those are the IDs of interactions that are related to this name. I want to pause here because it's a little confusing if there's any questions before we get to finding the actual average rating, or if people are following me. Okay. So
I'm following and I don't see any questions.
Cool, great. So now, great, but this is just the row ID. What we want is the ratings. So you can just do dot rating or dot whatever field you want to pull up. Now we have a list of those ratings. Okay, but now we want the average. Even easier. We can just write average. It's a Grist function, so it's all caps, and find that average. And now you find the average. And you have it on the candidate. So that's how you can use that sort of like, it's like a reverse reference lookup to find those related records. And remember, Kendall, she doesn't have any interactions. That's why you're getting this error. You're doing an average and you're dividing by 0 because there's no interactions there. So there's nothing. What you can do, if you don't want to see those errors, if you want to be really meticulous, is you can add ifERROR. So first it's the exact same formula that we have to find that average. Or if there's an error, give it to me blank. Just show me nothing so I don't see this ugly error message. You could always do that. But you should be careful when using ifERROR, because if there is a real error that you want to know about, you wouldn't see it. So if I come in here and I just like put some nonsense in there, it's not letting me know that something is wrong. So you should really only use ifERROR if you're really sure that, that your formula is correct, or just, live with this error. It just means there's no interactions there. Okay, so that is my favorite thing to explain. It opens up a lot about Grist. And one more thing, these are the new things we just created. There is a duplicate formula in here. So what this does is if I add another Kendall Jenner, it'll find that duplicate. So there's a video about this on YouTube that Dimitri can share in the chat, where I go into what exactly this is doing and how you can play with it to give you slightly different views of this to find duplicates. So I'll leave that as a challenge. Go watch the YouTube video and see if you can understand this and recreate this yourself in your own data. And that's it. That's what I wanted to talk about. We can open it up for questions now. Or we can go to, yeah.
Thank you. This was great. I just put in the link to the YouTube video, which explains how to detect duplicates the way this column does here. And yeah, we can open up for questions. So feel free to put them in the chat, or else I'll go over the questions that were submitted when people were registering.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's start with this question asked earlier about the invoice template. The question was, how do I change the currency on an invoice template?
Mm-hmm. So we're talking about this template where selecting a different invoice populates this custom widget. So this is much harder than just my dice roller or a Google Maps embed. So essentially the issue is if you change the currency here, you can change the currency in Grist by formatting the currency. So you can pick different currencies. It's not applying to the custom widget. This is something that we'd like to work out on the forum. Like this would be a lot of fun to figure out, like, how do we bring over that formatting, or find some other way to set the currency within your document. So we can start a thread about that in the forum and dig in deeper. It'll be a bit longer to do here.
Yeah, let me just add to that. Yeah, for feature requests such as this, there isn't an easy way to do it. So I don't think it's something we can explain right on the webinar. It requires a change to the custom widget. But if you ask in the community forum at community.getgrist.com, that's the best place to ask. Basically, that's where other people with the same question would find it. And we are happy to improve our custom widgets, the ones that we maintain. You can change them on your own as well. But yeah, let's work it out in the forum, and we'll figure out exactly how this should work, and we can do it.
And also custom widgets. This is something that we're currently working on right now, and we're going to have make it easier to configure. The UI will be changing hopefully in the near future. Working on it right now.
Okay, I have another question, which is, what's the easiest way to learn Grist quickly and pass the learning curve?
Okay, I'd say it's in the support site, the how-to tutorials that walk through the lightweight CRM, analyzing, visualizing data, and managing business data. Those are the 3 templates that are pinned at the top of the template gallery. You can build those on your own, and it comes across, it even tells you here, like you'll learn how to add tables, link data, set column types. So it's very focused on like the key concepts of Grist. So that's probably the best way to learn Grist. And also under more examples, there is a reference columns guide that has videos that goes into some of what I talked about today, a little bit more about reference columns. And there's also a summary tables guide that goes into summary tables, which are pivot tables, how to summarize data, and then use formulas to do even more things at the summary level. I think with that, you'd be well on your way to being a super user.
Okay, great. And the next question is, somebody is asking about Airtable and how Airtable competes with Grist.
Okay, So we recently published a blog article about it. So this, I'll just sort of recap what's here, but you can find this in our blog. The main difference, or a big one, there's highly productive layouts. So if we come back here, just being able to click and drag different, I mean, this doesn't look great, but you can, if you wanted to, click and drag things, move it around, resize it, link widgets on the same screen. That's very different from Airtable, where in Airtable, you can relate data, but when you want to see it, you can click on it and it pops up in like a card view, but there's no way to sort of dynamically link those widgets the way that you can in Grist. So that's a big differentiator. And then there's also formulas. Grist supports Python formulas. You can do a lot more. Trigger formulas is another that we just talked about. So that's another different. You can do multi-line Python formulas. You have access to the standard library. So here, you click here. Right, you can do this in Grist. Other differentiators would be data ownership. There's no data lock-in with Grist. You can export your entire database as a .grist file, which is a SQLite file, and use it somewhere else. Whereas with Airtable, you can export one table at a time as a CSV. So it's like a little bit sometimes hard to move away if you wanted to. Also, Grist is open source, so there's a bit more reassurance that it'll, if anything happens to us, that will still be there. So you won't be sort of cut off from your data or from Grist forever. Custom access permissions. So that's, you have a copy of Grist, say you're doing sales and you have a bunch of salespeople. As the manager, I can see everyone's deals, everyone's contacts, but each salesperson only sees their deals and their contacts. And we're working on the same copy of document. That's a big differentiator as well. You have that flexibility and who can see what. You can set it down at the row level, column level, table level. Yeah, I think those are the biggest difference. I don't know if I missed anything. You want to add anything, Dimitri? And then of course price, but yeah, you can you can come down and see what's available here.
Yeah, no, that's a good summary of the main differentiators. I would add that essentially, I feel like Grist is better for complex data. When you need to do something complicated, Grist makes it possible thanks to the more advanced formulas and kind of easier to create formulas. Some of these other features with linking and access rules and so on. When your data is relatively simple, Airtable might look better, but Grist is getting to look better as well. So that's something we're working on. But so mainly the main benefits is when your data is getting more complex or larger. Airtable also has pretty low row limits, even at the very highest limit of the most expensive plan. The row limit it's pretty limiting if you're like a serious business and have a lot of data.
Yeah.
So I think that's actually all the questions that we have. If anybody online now has any other questions, put them in chat now. Otherwise, we can make it a short webinar and within half an hour, which is great.
Yeah.
Anais, would you like to mention our product hunt launch?
Oh yeah. So I guess I could go to the page. So we launched on Product Hunt last week. We're super excited. We got product of the day, which is exciting. And I think number 4 for the week. We'll see where we land for the month. So if you come, you can see the product of the day. That's me again. Okay. And yeah, so it was wonderful. The support was great. A lot of our current users who had been using us since before Product Hunt came out and left reviews and were super supportive. We're very grateful for that. And it's very exciting.
All right. Thank you very much, Anais. Okay. And yes, anybody on here, we're going to announce the next webinar. We're going to try to keep them going monthly. If you have any questions or ideas what you would like us to talk about or good things to learn about, please let us know and we'll listen.
Yeah. Also, I see Enrique's here. Hi. He came to the last one too. So yeah. Okay,
Thanks, everyone.
bye.